Are you good, Daphne? Perfect. Thank you. I'm Justin McCullen. This is the Wednesday, November 9th date for the Traffic Management Advisory Committee meeting this evening. There's actually someone else coming in. So just as a point of information for everybody here, this is being both video recorded for the Needham YouTube channel that gets submitted for all of our boards and committees, as well as being audio recorded for the benefit of Daphne for a record of the minutes. Just be aware of that. Just from a roll call perspective, just want to kind of go around the room, figure out who's here for the minutes. Justin McCullen, Chair. I am present and accounted for. Rain Hoyland. Here. Tom Ryder, Engineering. Yep. John McGrath, Police Department. Here. Rebecca Tarantino is absent. Donna Mullen. Here. Barry McNeely. Absent. Gus Trisson. Present. And Bob Chicola. Present. Excellent. Thank you. So this is the Traffic Management Advisory Committee. We are a group of residents and town employees with various stakeholders within transportation and public safety through Needham. And we try to come up with, listen to residents come in with their concerns and trying to figure out and navigate the, trying to come up with creative solutions for public safety while trying to be aware that there are certain regulations of what we can do, what we can't do, et cetera. But certainly, we try to come up with some of these creative solutions. So we are residents, all of at least the residents here are all from Needham. So my apologies. So I would ask the approval of the minutes. I know the committee, the minutes were sent out. Any comments, concerns, deletions, additions? So move to accept the minutes. Do I have a second? Second, Ms. Mullen. A third, Mr. Chicola. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? I abstain. Abstentions, Mr. McGrath, for his absence. Perfect. Okay. Very well. Two abstentions. Passes unanimously. And I guess I just heard Bob is not here today from the status to be able to get a status report. So I did want to, there was one item that I wanted to bring up. Maybe you could present, Rain, on the progress of the pilot for the crosswalk and just kind of where that status is, as well as I know that there was some activity on the radar speed signage. And so if you could give an update to the committee on this.
I'll start with the speed one. Forest Street is not operating their solar apparatus for the speed radar signs. So one of them is not functioning properly. So we've done a work order, Mr. Chair, to hardwire it. So that one will be repurposed somewhere else. The hardwire system should be in a month and a half. The vendor, the electrical contractor we have on call, believes that Verizon could be 8 months to a year to hook it up. So our contractor puts the base in, puts the ped in, and then brings the wire up to the pole. Then the electrical company has to put it in. Now, their experience, it's a huge contractor. They do statewide work. It's 8 months to a year potentially, unless we could do some negotiating with them, but the reality is it could be 8 to 12 months. That's in part why we went with the solar in the first place, to try to get them in quicker. So that's in progress. As far as the parking, to help with pedestrian, for the pedestrians on Great Plain at Maple, we have draft plans here that the committee can review, that engineering drew. And we were going with the red plastic jersey barrier, so 5 to 6 feet in length to flank the crosswalk. Proposed on that plan, because it's a pilot, We wanted to show the committee first what we're gonna do, and we could expedite it quickly. So within the next few days, we plan to put the barricades in, help with the pedestrian safety crossing, some bollards, as well as relocate the crossing signs into the barricades, so they'll be more visible. Same detail will be at Highland Ave, crossing from Town Hall to Walgreens. Exact same detail.
Okay.
Both crossings. That'll happen, if not this week, because Friday's a holiday, Monday, Tuesday next week.
Was there also going to be the grinding of the box down, the traffic box or not? The do not block box?
We haven't, I think we need to discuss that.
Okay.
Because that was approved by engineering and maybe the board. I don't know if that was a regulatory thing, that maybe Tom could speak to that.
Yeah, the select board, I think, specifically requested that several years ago.
Mhm.
So,
No, and if we need to present to them, represent to them to say that, because I think that it provides, that it's too much of a distraction, I think, given the markings, et cetera. I think that I don't know if the benefit of the juice is worth the squeeze on that. And I think it actually can provide more of a distraction. We can certainly have more conversations with that. And if we need to engage, to have somebody study that, or look at a previous study to verify. But I think from a site perspective, it is too much. We're talking about the do not,
the don't block.
the don't block the box markings that are on there. It's with the crosswalk, and then it's just a lot to going on there, especially if we're going to change some of the trying to narrow the distance of crossing. Do we know if we figured out any more on lighting? I know that last time you were here.
Yes, so Wellesley Municipal Light Plant is our contractor, and they were looking into adding, providing some more lighting options. So there's a few areas that they do use in town, in their town. I don't have the information right now.
Okay, all right. So I asked the committee, is there any comment on this pilot, so that we can kind of go forward with this? Obviously, as you remember, I don't know if Lieutenant McGrath, you were here when we discussed it last, but it was a pilot to perhaps reduce the crossing length by putting in, hardening to kind of reduce that length of that crossing so that it would, increase the safety. Obviously, we removed the bollard or the stanchion because it kept on getting whacked.
No, absolutely. No, I think it's a great improvement. I know the officers who were present for the meeting on Highland Avenue really appreciated being a part of it. And felt like they had a lot of knowledge to contribute, and they're appreciative they were included in the process, and I think it's gonna work out well. So
I would agree with that, and because Wellesley did it near Forest Street, near Babson and the golf course, they had a backup report by an engineering firm. We initially worried about visibility, if somebody's in a wheelchair or something like that.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anything online, no regulations. However, the beta report supplied some back information, so this is appropriate for us to
Great.
put in the barricades.
Okay.
So we just piggyback off their study.
Great. So we're implementing. You're just briefing more. We're not looking for any sort of action.
Theirs is much more extensive than ours.
Yes.
Question, those are plastic barriers,
Yes.
and are you gonna fill them as water,
We're talking either water with sand
Lysol, or
sand.
sand?
Yeah, we can go either way.
Is that? and it
I
isn't-
prefer water with,
Yeah, the reason I'm saying it's an object in the middle, does it need any protection? I mean, if you hit them, I know they're off the travel way, but you feel that they're okay? You don't need to protect them with any attenuators or whatever? I just
the
ask-
ones in Wellesley are just, they lined the street. What they did was,
Is that Babson?
it's near Babson and the
Yeah,
country
I've seen
club.
it.
Did you see it?
Driven many
So-
times.
Yeah, and so we're just gonna mimic that, move the pedestrian crossing signs forward, which are now hidden by parked cars. To travelers to actually see the signs. And it's a pilot, so we want to see how it works out,
Okay,
but we want to anchor it. They're not concrete.
no,
So if somebody,
I got that.
they could tip or tap into them. Because it's up against parking as well, on one of them, Great Plains.
My experience is that the water is just much easier to manage. You
Mhm.
need to
Drain it.
move them, you just pull the plug and you can,
Sure.
you know, two guys can push it wherever they want. You don't need a loader.
Right, so what we would do is do water with antifreeze.
Okay. That's,
We'll try to get that friendly antifreeze, because then you dump it, it's
Then it's in a
hazardous and what have you.
different
So,
committee. But
yeah.
But nonetheless, yeah, no, that's a good idea. There was, I think there was this would be great. And the timeline of this is all ready to kind of execute on and
Yeah, we just decided we should brief the committee on
Yep.
it and get any input, if there's any tweaks to it, because we called it a draft. And if it's good to go, we'll implement it the next several business days.
okay.
We have all the components ready to go.
Any comments, concerns? I think
What's
that's-
one more, are you gonna put in flag? I'm just wondering again, late at night, dark, and nobody parked there.
Yep.
Any sense or any,
We could always, it's always good to add reflectors, so somebody doesn't clip it towards the travel way. That's a
Okay.
good idea. So we can do that on the oncoming travel side.
Sure.
Absolutely.
thank you.
Great, thanks for the report. If I could ask one other report, just to the committee, because I know this definitely, this came across committee was and I know normally Bob would have the whole report, but can you give a status on the Harris Ave Dedham project? I know that there
Sure.
was an issue with the level of the pavement, and then we had to go with a
Sure. So Dedham Ave Harris is mostly complete construction wise. The geometric improvements radically changed how vehicles have to operate there. That project was complete street funded by the state, focused on pedestrians. So it's actually tightened up the intersections, made the side streets more 90 degrees. It's all about the safety of pedestrians. Now to maneuver, cars used to be doing a diagonal. If that's no longer the case, they'll hit the curbing. That did happen. We discussed this last month. It did happen a week after that
It was
discussion.
like a couple days, yeah.
And the car was not to be found, but there's parts everywhere. So as we go through the striping and the additional signage, post-construction, physical construction, it'll be more visible. Right now, there's temporary cones. We're gonna do little sign devices as well as get the traffic markings and brighten it up.
Okay.
For, nighttime, poor weather conditions, so it's more visible. And the RRFB was installed yesterday.
Okay, I saw that.
I think yesterday. It'll be activated in a few days.
Where's that on?
It's crossing Dedham Ave at Harris.
You don't have to have Verizon 6 to 8 months now for that one. No. that's-
Those are solar.
I know. Anyways, any comments with regards to Harris Ave and Dedham from the committee? Nope. All right. And I think unless anyone has any noteworthy questions with regards to anything we covered before, I know normally we have Bob kind of bring us through. Do you know if the speed study had gone through on, it was a speed count and type on Chestnut by like Lantern Lane?
I don't know.
It was
the
an
status,
evaluation, it was
maybe.
an evaluation for a crosswalk. Do you know?
No, I don't have information on that.
Okay.
The last one I see from him was Country Way.
Oh, right, that was two meetings. Okay, got it. Okay. And then we'll get the report back from those next week. So,
Mr. Chair, we could, also, the board voted to install signs on Pickering at the driveway,
yes.
within about the 5 feet of the driveway.
Yes.
That work order went through, the signs are on order, that should take place next week.
Okay, perfect.
The signs will be in.
I did also want to say there is now, it went through the select board meeting yesterday, the stop sign at Pickering and GPA. I actually put a C-click fix on that. I'll just start that process of a month or two ago because you had a stop line. You got a stop sign.
It's
and so-
installed.
But now, yeah, everything is installed and I saw it went through the consent agenda on the select board. So there now is a stop sign where there was a stop line. There was one thing that I did want to mention as I was going through, and I didn't know if we want to do it motion by motion, but there are a number of stop lines without stop signs. Is that something that, you know, maybe just from you guys would internally be able to review that so that, because obviously you cannot have a stop line without a stop sign.
We can.
And either we just grind down the stop line if it doesn't meet the warrant for the stop sign, or we
Or-
install a sign
Cover it, yeah.
where it is, because a lot of those ladder streets where they terminate, it's almost every
Mhm.
other, there's a line, and it's the incongruency and the non-standardization, I think, draws a little bit of confusion. for
It's
folks.
also enforceable.
It's, yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, from a perspective, well, they're not stopping and
Right,
the
you can't,
lieutenant will get a call, they'll get out and say, yeah, lieutenant will enforce it as soon as there's a sign. There's no sign.
right, exactly.
And a regulation, so we gotta do a regulation.
Yes, and that's the thing, is yes.
Do the sign.
This is,
And then maybe there was at one point, and maybe that's a sign got knocked down
You're talking about intersecting onto Great Plain Avenue.
onto Great Plain Ave. Yeah, so maybe there were signs and they got knocked down or whatever. So there already is a regulation, but it just needs to be.
I remember hearing years ago that they were intending on doing regulations and then they didn't meet the warrants.
Okay.
So they might have started with line striping and then.
Got, and if we,
stopped.
yeah, I think then
And it just keeps happening, so.
we need to grind down the lines, right, you know, or maybe not, but just leave it the way it is. But just to see if
It's
there's,
a great point.
there's
What
some gaps.
happens is when a contractor usually does that work.
Yep.
And they come in at night, so they do the main drags, so whatever's there, they just keep doing. So it's catching
Yep.
them and saying, don't refresh this,
Right.
or we grind it and we have to remove it, otherwise they just duplicate what's down there, and it's probably gone on for years.
so what I'll do is I think it just instead of doing this as a committee thing, we'll maybe just, we'll take that in as a something to take a look at. Okay, perfect. So,
There are
Sorry.
a few other plans too.
Yep.
For Highland Avenue, that crosswalk is very similar to the Great Plain Avenue at Maple.
yep,
System will set up. I was talking about that one as well. that they-
Oh, okay. Yep. Yes, that was definitely,
And then we have two details on Country Way.
Yep.
And it's more of a line striping.
Yep.
Scenario for now. There
there's,
are two scenarios.
yep, okay,
The concern was people driving on Country Way and taking that right and just sweeping in at a high speed.
correct.
So we have one detail showing striping for now, and then perhaps we'll get a chance the next summer to cut the pavement.
Mhm.
But you can see how it works as a pilot.
Yep,
The other is creating an island, but I'm not sure that one really solves our problem.
because then you're still
Yeah.
gonna be having the speed of people, which is what the actual
Yeah, that was.
complaint was. As you remember, this was 2 meetings ago. Is there any comments or concerns from the board with regards to the status of what's going on? So you guys are going to evaluate this internally and figure out the right mitigation going forward. So when do you think a decision we've made on which A or B?
I think we just need to talk about it internally
Okay.
as well.
All right.
So. Do you guys have any thoughts on the preferred?
I actually did the chip sealing detail, that was where they did the road,
Mhm.
and any way we could just get them to make that right, to have to go left. I don't know what you feel is a better way to do it, but it's clearly just a cut off.
Yeah,
Like even standing there, I was, because you're in like the
Yeah.
A pillar on the other
it's
side,
wide
I
open.
was dodging cars, so it was definitely any way to accentuate that would be my preferred. I don't know what,
Give me this one. right
So you
here.
mean actually narrowing it down, almost cut,
Yeah.
forcing them to take a right? So
for both ways of travel, because these people, there's right now, I think the stop sign's back here.
Yeah.
Yep, so they're just shooting on the country way
Yeah.
continuously. Anyway, they have to come and stop and then.
And then take a
proceed. Yeah.
that's probably the best. I mean, from my. But I welcome
That
anyone.
was my
Any
preferred
comments?
one as well. so.
I think we're in agreement, the 90-degree
This
is
one, yeah.
more preferred, remove some asphalt, move the stop sign inbound, which is kind of in the woods right now. And if a bus that stops in there, they can stop on the paint. So
Yeah, I think I suggest that. to the
Yeah,
petitioner
I
too,
think
like
you
just
did. So
throw
it
the
makes,
bus
it
across the
makes sense.
intersection.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so I think that concludes, we don't, Mr. Jordan, is Mr. Jordan here? Mr. Jordan, you You are up. We've actually, so we've just to give everyone, this is the part of the meeting that we're actually hearing from the petitioners. The whole committee has, that we've read and are familiar with the information that was submitted. So this is kind of your opportunity to kind of highlight or kind of try to keep each presentation down just for the sake of making sure. I know that there's a lot of kids here as well, and want to make sure that everything is, you know, everyone can go to bed on an early time at the homework there. I like that. Because I can get my daughters. I'm not going to-
I think you are the homework.
And so actually, do you mind given, and this is a question, I know just because the kids are here from, if we shift the order, is that a problem?
You're saying go after someone else?
Yeah,
Go
just
now? Oh,
kind of move some things that I think, you know, the kids, I want to get them. Is that a problem? Is that,
No.
I just wanted to. So if we move to item number 6, which is speeding on Mark Tree Road, Stephanie Petter. You want to come up and so we've seen the information that was submitted, but this is your opportunity to provide some color to that and you know, have a dialogue.
Sure. So I'm
Sit
Stephanie Petter, my family, I have Michael, Shankly and Hamilton. We live on Mark Tree Road, and my children would actually like to ask for the town's help to implement some new traffic signs where we are, so that they are in a safer environment. So they actually also made a video that.
I have it right here.
Would you like to show the video? I think
Sure.
it paints a pretty good picture of where we are. And
I see.
Do you live?
107 Mark Tree Road.
Why are you making a video for the Needham traffic community?
Because when we try to cross for school, cars are always going in just like. And it's a bit dangerous for us because every time we cross, we just speed around the line. And we can't see them.
Just go from our side of the street? You have no sidewalk. Okay. So now, what are you guys doing with those signs?
We're gonna put them so the cars can see and so we slow down. So we can have a safer.
And what else would you like to ask for help from the Needham traffic?
We would like to put like on the tree, like a sign that shows how fast you're going and speed limit down the hill. There's always people up the hill.
What's the speed limit here?
25. There's no.
Okay. All right, so now we're gonna go put up the sign.
Signs.
thank you. So we live on Mark Tree Road between Oak Crest and Perry, on the part of the street that slopes downhill, and our driveway, along with a couple of our neighbors, actually sit on the blind curve. So when we go to school in the morning, we actually have to cross to walk to school because that's the side with the sidewalk. We're not able to see the traffic coming downhill unless we are stepping onto the street. And oftentimes, you know, the kids and I have to hop backwards into the driveway or run across the street. And that poses another type of danger if they trip and fall. And, it's natural, I think, for cars as they're going downhill, they're picking up speed, plus the acceleration of going downhill. So, oftentimes they're not able to stop right away. I know that there have been other issues too, with some of our neighbors that live where on the corner of Oak Crest and Mark Tree Road, where the street actually is starting to curve, where I think the address is 124. They said that, they've lived there for 40 years. They've had cars hit their curb. They've had cars hit the stone wall at the corner of their property on their lawn. They've at the fire hydrant that used to be on Mark Tree Road in front of their house actually had to be relocated to Oak Crest because that was also struck. So, I think the challenge with dealing with speeding cars has been an ongoing issue. And I think it's now that, there are younger families moving into the neighborhood, and as well as, neighbors that have been living in the neighborhood for quite some time, it's continuing to be an issue. So, I think the kids would like to ask for help to maybe put up some traffic signs to reduce the traffic before they're coming around the curve.
I'm sorry, my bad. I have a question for you all. So there's some signs on the way up, yellow signs, which have 25 mile limit, but I'm not sure that that's not actually a speed limit, that's a guidance.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which kind of baffles me just logically that it's a speed limit, but you actually put in a sign up that says, please don't go the speed limit. It's almost, and honestly, if city, the town would make a lot of money, they could park on those corners in the morning, and they would get ticket after ticket after ticket. The neighbors had to put a mirror across the street. They would let them get the mirror on their tree across the street so they can back their cars out. When I have to turn into the driveway, it's not one house, it's everything else. I almost get rear-ended every time. I have to slow down 100 cars before the driveway. People literally hammering their brakes on. So I guess, with years of practice, we already know the speed is too fast by putting those signs up.
Sure. So, so the speed limit is actually set by the state. Unless it is a placarded white and black sign that says speed limit, where the speed limit in Needham, about most of Needham, about 80 to probably 90% falls in what is known as thickly settled, in which the state speed limit for thickly settled is 30 miles an hour. And that is the kind of de facto speed limit if it's an unmarked road, depending upon, for most of the roads that are needed. Anytime we'll see an advisory speed limit, which is in yellow, those are the ones that are not necessarily enforceable from a law enforcement perspective. They can only hold you accountable and responsible for black and white signs or the limits that are there. 34, basically my driver's test, it's 20, 30, and 40. Yes, that's right, 50. So that is one thing, and I think so it's not something that towns. That's not an accurate statement. The town has some flexibility to do something town-wide or street by street, but there's a process to do that with the state. And they have evaluated and looked at that, and they're continuously looking at figuring out whether, I know the consultants had kind of talked about and recommended not to do a town-wide reduction like some other towns. But that's something that the town can still decide to do, and it is on the dashboard. But nonetheless, just to your perspective, that's that incongruency between a yellow sign and a black and white sign, that's statewide. That's a.
My other question would be, there are some of those entry into that, flash laser.
Yeah, by the Walker School. Yeah.
How does that happen? So there's an hour limit. How do they get a flashing sign that says 25? to support that yellow advisory sign?
I believe, yeah,
You
I
can tell-
believe that the school, somebody put it up there, not us. And it's not
Do you have their number?
enforceable.
So I do have a question for the town is, do we have any speed studies, anything like that on there? And I mean, I know if we haven't done one by request, it's probably a decade old, but do we have anything?
So I know Rebecca has, I mean, probably the last one was when Rebecca had asked for it, because we have a committee member, we say Rebecca, I know that your wife had spoken to Rebecca. And she lives right at the corner of Oak and Mark Tree. She's on the committee now because of an issue that she brought in front of the town. I'm just kind of filling out for everyone else. And I think that was because of speed, she got onto the committee, and I think it was studied at one point, so
This location here, I'm not familiar that this location was recently.
yeah, I know, I agree with you, probably hasn't recently been studied, maybe you remember it, probably over 5 years ago, because that was in the,
Probably great at the time.
yeah. So. And I, just from full disclosure, I live 2 streets over, and this is I call it drag racing for people going out to the dump, from the town and people lose speed.
Is there any space in the road? I mean, I've driven it certainly myself, but not that recently. Is there enough width in the roadway for narrowing? For bottlenecking a little bit?
I don't think.
I mean, not for a sidewalk.
No, I don't think so. It's a pretty narrow landscaping. It's pretty tight. It's a pretty tight. I come from next door.
Yeah, no, it's, the road diet sort of approach to it that narrows it down. The narrower the roadway, the slower people tend to go.
It's got a grade issue too as well, so I think that's why people, after that 4-way stop sign at the top, they can, it's kind of, it opens up toward that curve.
There's another ledge right up against the road too, so it does kind of pinch point that road area. We were talking about, was it 20 feet wide, in some locations?
Yeah, most of our roadways that are cut through street and residential, we try to do a minimum 24 feet. That road goes from about 24 feet down to under 20 feet at some of the pinch points where there's ledge, and when they originally started constructing the road many years ago. And in the reconstruction in the future, we try to get a consistent width. Is typical, but the design engineers that we'll have will be going through that process. And we could always report to the board to include into the process. But typically where it's pinch point, the designers will try to make it a consistent width of 23, 24 feet, where now it's down to just under 20 feet at some point.
Sure.
Mark Tree on any capital plan to have curbing improvements?
Yes.
Like
It's
they did
under,
on
Yeah, we've been talking about this.
yeah, so we've already have the capital for the design, so the consultant, Tom could speak to it. Is either in the process of already been awarded to start the design, so the survey's been done. And then to look at what that design would look like. It's at the beginning of the process.
We haven't selected a design. GPI did the survey. We haven't selected the designer yet. Whether that's in-house or whether we just have someone look at them with a little diet.
Could a short-term fix or a less more economical help at least be another one of those yellow advisory signs on that downward section from higher up to Great Plain on Mark Tree? So there's one on the way up.
Yep.
But actually on the bend is an issue on the way down. There isn't.
And there's not, and I was talking about this with Rebecca, and I went on the street, took a walk with my kids. There was, I think, recently put a sign up. I don't know how, I know normally,
There's a slow sign right
there,
right there.
it's basically an angle, basically saying, curve to the right. It's not slow. It's basically a newer sign where it basically says a 25 with a curve going up. I would be in favor of doing 25 with a curve for going down. Where that is, we can, let you guys figure out, determine the best sign for that, probably before that curve. I think that's the easiest quick fix. I think middle term, I think this area is probably a candidate for a radar speed sign, once we have, you know, that program to how we're gonna implement it. Is because of I think it'll hit the number of cars that, you know, internally we're gonna have to come up with our own qualifications for it, but I think it would be a candidate for one. There's also sun there too, so it's better.
Is the sign that's being repurposed on Forest Street already have a home?
It does not. So this could, and it's funny because the committee talked about if it didn't get enough solar, direct light,
Yes.
since we're on the fence with that with our vendor,
I'll
it
buy a
would be
solar lamp.
repurposed. So yes, it can be repurposed.
One of the reasons, I mean, we're not that we're hesitant, yes, that was recently, I think, but
Right,
So
that's
there's-
going up.
that's going up the hill.
So there is a sidewalk on both sides.
And it dead ends
It
right
ends
dead
there.
ends.
And
right
it
there.
discontinues.
And it goes.
So there is justification in your design, in your upcoming design to continue the cycle. Yeah.
I don't know if the town will like is looking at adding any.
So that will be discussed in the
In
design.
the design,
But
yes.
there's, as you can see, the poles,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
you know, the poles, the grading and the ledge.
Yes,
is why
sure.
that
No, I
grading's
understand
there.
all that. Do you have enough right away?
They're 40-foot right away.
It's a 40-foot, so we do, but if it's solid ledge and you hammer it, you're not gonna blow it up, so if you hammer it, it'll shake the houses, so we're trying to avoid that
Okay.
if possible.
I will tell the residents, I lived through a year and a half of that on Freestyle Road. It is something to defaultly wish to avoid. The hammering of ledge.
Yeah, it'll create the shockwave right into the property and damage the, so it's not about the money, it's about the safety, but so that's, as we go through the design, we'll look at it. It's unlikely we'll add, but
Yeah.
it's not decided yet.
So, I mean, I would support probably in the very short term, a motion to do an advisory speed sign with a indicating also the curve. Motion this evening. I think that there's more of a middle term that I think an implementation of radar speed sign. The only reason that I'm hesitant is because we haven't formulated how we're going to deploy and purchase speed signs. And this is one of these things where everybody in town is going to want speed signs. And the thing is, if you start placarding these things everywhere, without some sort of qualification for how you're going to deploy them to have meet the criteria, it's going to be, it's going to be just placarded everywhere. You know, now that we've, you know, have looked at the strategy and saying going forward, we would kind of use this control, you know, as a speed control throughout town if it qualifies for our own internal qualifications. We now have one extra sign because of low sun and low visibility, low light because of the solar. So now there is one. So probably would be a good candidate for this is what I'm saying. I don't want to say right now, this is where we're going to put it. Unless the committee has any other, you know.
I was gonna say, I'll make a motion to start that process in the right direction.
okay.
Could we do a updated speed study on Marktree in the area of Oak Crest? And in that, can we look at adding a 25 advisory sign and a curve on the downhill where highway deems appropriate? And then bring that back at the
Yes.
next meeting or two.
So yes,
when
the
that study's complete.
speed type count for Marktree and then the 25-mile-an-hour advisory sign with curve delineation. Yes.
Two on that, Jennifer. Be sure it's a day that the dump is open, because that's substantially impacts.
I'd actually want to say that perhaps if we can schedule when we do it, that those signs are taken down.
Yes,
Right.
Because I don't think we want to get a speed study with all the signs saying
Right.
you could drive like your kids live here or whatever. Those are just like right out, you know, I just to coordinate with that because we want to make sure that doesn't skew the study of the speed.
I
And
agree.
We do a full week study.
okay,
It's
yeah.
not just one day.
So it'll be a full week study. So whatever, when they, and I maybe we can work with Tyler, whatever, once to figure out when that is, those signs come down, the study's done, and then the signs can come back up.
Question before we whether or not we want to add to it.
Yeah.
I recognize the width of the roadway can't be really adjusted, whatever, but whether or not the white striping boundary on the sides of the road would contribute to a visual narrowing without a physical narrowing.
Fog lines.
Yep. And that might help just with, especially with the curve too, and at nighttime, you'll be able to see kind of a,
So we have to maintain a minimum width
Mhm.
unless it's changed, and that's done through the Fed to the state. At the pinch point, there wouldn't be enough room to meet the minimum width.
Okay.
Which we could drop it to 10 feet if it's under 20 feet. You also, on one side is curbing, so typically you put it at least a foot off the curbing.
Mhm.
Then you would have the travel lane on the other side, so we can look at that,
all
but
right.
it might not fit until we do the work in the future, a couple of years out.
So why don't we say, because Lieutenant made a motion to do speed study, speed type count. We'll coordinate the time with the petitioner for their signs, but also including a 25-mile-an-hour advisory speed sign with curvature arrow, I don't know what you call it. And then an evaluation of a white line to, you know, as long as it fits within standard. So that's the motion on the table. Do I hear?
I hear a second.
I hear a second from Donna. Do I hear discussion on the tape on the matter?
I should mention that we have participants with raised hands, which probably related to the fact that I did not manage to share the video with our Zoom audience.
Thank you for unmuting me. Actually, not because of the Zoom video. I had actually brought this almost identical issue to the committee about a year ago, and that's when the advisory sign had been introduced on the uphill portion. I actually live in that sort of salmon colored house that you were showing. And I just wanted to come in support of Stephanie and everyone else and in saying that, you know, this is kind of despite the speed signs, people are still sort of going around that curve at a, you know, pretty fast. And it remains a problem, you know, pulling out of our driveways is difficult, but in the opposite direction, because we can't see past the ledge and people are blazing around that curve. So I had just sort of come again to see about one of those radar speed signs or some other, because we had been told in the past that things like speed bumps are not really an option in Needham, as far as I understand, or, you know, some of the more aggressive measures like, you know, stop signs at, you know, other places. That's all.
Could I have your address, please?
I'm at 115 Mark Tree Road, 115.
Thank you.
And this is the display name is your name, right? Alex Shapton, just for the record.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'll make sure the name is.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion that's been seconded. Can you read the motion again? No discussion? No discussion. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, this passes. So at least we can at least start the process. The data is really important to be able to do anything. We need to have correct data and up-to-date data, because we can't rely on a study that's, you know, many years old. So at least we'll have that going forward with, and then we can look to see radar speed signs. And once we come up with figuring out a policy, because people are going to grab that.
One left of the one to grab.
That is true. It is true.
How long does it normally take, you know, for speed study to take place?
It will take at least a month. Usually we have other speed studies to do, so it's usually 1 week at a time, so, and limited amount of equipment. So, so it will take a little while. Sometimes we're waiting on timing of the season, school season, summer, you know, like
School season
Christmas
is a great
season,
time because,
Christmas,
you know, that
yeah.
morning commute traffic
exactly.
is, you're welcome to park in our driveway.
Actually, a question, with the construction, is it still affecting the traffic flow, restricting it? So
Yeah,
is
so-
now not a good time because of the
No,
construction?
actually, I think it's still a good time because people are actually driving even more aggressively because of road closures.
Okay.
in our opinion, you know.
Now they're angry.
Yeah, they are, and from the side streets.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and actually, John, is any area good for your trailer, just to throw your trailer in?
Well, the exact issue we're dealing with, it's tight.
Okay.
And believe it or not, enforcement is difficult on Mark Trail.
No, I just from an advisory. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
even saying that you need to have.
But
a couple
no one
there.
can utilize your driveway might help if that's.
The police have a trailer with the speed sign mobile trailer, but there are certain clearances and.
I'll have Officer Baez scout the area and see if it's feasible, and if so, we can, not during the time of speed study, but yeah.
Perfect, okay, great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Chair.
I've lived on Marshall Road for 3 years. And it seemed when I moved in, there was a sign that said no trucks. And I don't know if we can grandfather and go back to that. Because there are trucks going up this street.
Yep.
That are not allowed on the passing lane on 128. It's just a matter of time.
So we're very limited for what we can do from something what's called a truck exclusion, which is actually derived from the state process that says what towns can do or cannot do. It actually,
Trying to wind around that.
No, so here's,
Because it's already there.
I don't think we had
I
a
don't-
regulation. I think
Is
so.
anyone older than me here?
I
I'm
don't,
72.
yeah. Yeah, so we do have a list of the regulations. I don't think there was an exclusion there, although there could have been signs.
Right.
So someone could have put up a sign. Because I think, I recall like years ago, someone mentioned it to me.
and there is a process to get a truck exclusion, but it actually is, the bar has to be very high. It's a volume issue. There's also the town needs to delineate an alternate path for trucks as well. So that then now has to forward trucks onto every other road, et cetera. And so therefore, and it has to be approved by the state. It's out of the hands of the municipality. But there is a process for truck exclusions, but like I said, that's,
And somehow I could prove that it already happened.
and that's something that, I mean, that you have to work out with.
Yeah, we would have that on file.
Okay, but if you want to check in with Tyler, and you can, see if, just to start that if they wanted to look, or you call the DPW and highway department or engineering department and see if there was something that's on the books, but I don't,
Yeah, if anybody has any additional comments or anything they want to, need to pass along to the committee, you can email me at tmac@needmma.gov.
and thank you. Thank you, and
Thank you.
thank you very much for the video. You guys, awesome job and very quiet and did the homework and better than my daughter could, so. So I think what we'll do is we'll go back to
Thank you very much.
Mr. Jordan, unless you had to do something you wanted to mention.
I just wanted to, committee member, Rebecca Tarantino's comments were similar in nature to the improvements suggested by the vote, so.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know, she had suggested a speed study, curve signs as well. Similar to what was suggested, so she's in agreement.
Perfect. Thank you for reminding me that we ended up talking about this before with her, but yes, thank
It's a
you.
big.
No, you're 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay.
No worries. So Mr. Jordan, thank you for moving the agenda. Accommodate the children, but please. Yes.
Thank you, committee members, for allowing me to present my case. I'm a resident of Needham, live on Spring Road, Needham Heights. I have a diagram here, but I'll explain it first. It matches the description that I presented. Essentially, what's happening, people are driving south on Webster. My guess is they can see the red light, or they see cars backing up from the red light, so they opt to cut through on Spring Road. Oftentimes, they will still be accelerating by the second house, which is my house. And sometimes they achieve speeds probably up to 50 miles per hour. It's a pretty long street, and it's pretty straight, so they can see there's nothing ahead of them. However, there are kids that are often playing in those streets. There's many young families, including my own. Furthermore, the issue is compounded by the fact that when people opt to take the left turn from Webster into Spring, it's more than a 90-degree angle. So I'm sure this committee is familiar with the issues that might happen where the corner can be blind. Some scary things can happen there, especially people with strollers. that sidewalk's kind of off, so sometimes people have the strollers on the street there. It's just pretty sketchy. So in any event, I don't really have I don't know the answer for how to fix it, other than my observations. Possibly you could put in speed bumps, although I don't love that either, but I'm open to ideas. My goal is to be brief, so I'm gonna stop there. And here are diagrams if anyone wants to see what I'm talking about, but they're not very good. If you care. Okay.
This is a speed issue. Okay, gotcha. I welcome. Comments from the
You know,
community?
we can't put speed bumps in, right?
Well, we've, well, not that we can't, we just haven't, but yes, there has been concerns both internally with the town. You can certainly speak, I don't want to speak for you, but also externally, other towns that have implemented. There are noise issues that have happened from landscape trucks every time they hit this. It's snow removal process, emergency vehicle movement. Whether they're temporary or permanent, there's advantages and disadvantages, but you know, typically to date, the town hasn't necessarily used that as a mitigation tool. But I don't know if you want to speak for you know, anything, but that's typically what has been our the town stance on speed bumps.
Sure, so speed bumps can be problematic. A lot of our sister communities that did so to try to mitigate traffic ended up removing them, noise, and it can also disrupt plowing. There's all kinds of other sidebar issues because we're in New England, of course. Speed tables that we've seen at school zones are slightly different. They're not as evasive to traffic. And it does slow cars down. But those are usually in front of schools that get a regulation and a whole design concept and are pretty expensive to put in. So we don't use them typically for side roads, traffic mediation. And speed bumps are super problematic.
I didn't grow up
We
in
don't
New
really
England, so
use
that's why I
it.
thought of that.
Yeah, it's also plowing, but the landscape trucks, other things, extremely noisy.
Yeah.
Mm.
So just so I understand, you believe that the root of the problem is they're coming down Webster and they're seeing the red light ahead at Thought by.
Or the traffic backup, but you can see the red light, yeah.
Yeah, and so they make a left onto Spring Road to cut down to Green.
Yeah, they're presumably going east anyway, so they're just gonna cut through. If you cut through and then turn south on Greendale, so make the next right and then intend to make the left onto High Street, that accomplishes the same route of where you want to go, and then you don't hit the light.
Is there a
So,
particular time of day that it's more prevalent?
I mean, I'm not outside of my house like quite all day, but when I'm out playing with my kids, that's like when I would, you know, be concerned about noticing it. So it
So
could
in
be
the
like around when a
after-
rush hour is building, right? It's like a natural outlet, so. But again, you know, I understand it's like, it's trade-off, so.
This is like a good area for a speed study, I mean, traffic study as well, so you don't have to sit out there looking.
Yeah.
For vehicles, we
Yeah.
know the time of day where the most traffic is coming through, and the speed as well, how much truck traffic. So on and so forth, so that's immediately what I was thinking about.
I think by all means, we can capture the speed. In all honesty, I think you're gonna find that this is gonna be one of those issues that isn't easy to correct. It's sporadic. To get a speed that is important, like your road is actually 30 miles an hour. So the buildup, people cutting down Spring Road, to have an officer station there to capture one or two people here and there, probably isn't gonna solve the problem entirely. And I bet your streets cut through isn't as great as some of the others. And the only reason I say that is people who typically live on Greendale in that neighborhood would know to go Greendale, not go all the way up to the lights to make the left on High. So the one-offs that are seeing that backup and utilizing Spring are even making it more sporadic than it would be on some other streets we've had, like Otis up by Webster at Great Pine Avenue. So I'm just trying to set expectations for you, because even if we do these studies and tell you, yeah, there's a couple cars that have gone 50 miles down the street, I don't have a great answer for how to stop that for you. Makes sense, not necessarily what you want to hear, but that's kind of where it's where I'm at. I don't know if anybody else has a.
Just a thought, as we do the traffic study, this traffic study, I haven't actually had a chance to look at one of the documents, but I'm assuming it's in, 1 hour buckets or something of that nature that shows you the traffic volume at different times of day. One of the things maybe we can look at is whether or not there is a specific time frame in which it's particularly prevalent. And whether or not, and I don't know what the policy town-wise is on this yet, but there have been times when it, do not enter between this time and that time. Where just the end of it, not that the street is one way, but that between, 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. when it's happening, you're not allowed to make that turn. I know we have something similar to that for the right turn from. Yes, that's what I'm thinking, right, where the firehouse opposite, diagonally opposite the firehouse. Because I go every morning, you're not allowed to make that right between, 7:30 and 8:30, I think it is. I'm not making a motion on it, I'm just sort of floating it out there. as If the problem turns out to be specific to a set time period.
Sure.
That it's something that could be discussed.
That's something, yes, and if we were to go forward with that, I think you'd have to have the majority of the residents in the street have to be able to be aware of that, because that wouldn't, it's not like a residents only, which aren't allowed. Residents only signs, those are, so in reality, that would mean no left-hand turn or no entry, whatever it may be, for anyone, that's people that live on that street or people.
Including you.
Yes, including
yourself.
or choosing to cut through, right, so, and that we, that's why we don't find them often, because we want to, many people maybe are interested in something like that, except when maybe it would affect them. And so when it comes down to actually saying, yeah, this is something that I would approve, on my road. But you're right to your point, if we do find something, between 8 and 9 a.m., there's, the 85th percentile is, 42, and it's, there are X number of cars an hour, and perhaps that is something that we would entertain and look into. But I think the first thing is to actually look and see what the problem is, and that's to really study it. So, it sounds like at least a traffic study is something that would be worth the squeeze. But that's something that.
Couple questions.
Sure.
If you talk to your neighbors, if they perceive this as a problem.
Yeah, straight cars speeding down, definitely.
How wide is the street? It's 24.
It's about 24 feet.
4 feet. And I noticed that most people have driveways, so there are probably very few parked cars during that time. So
There are very few parked cars. Yeah, exactly.
So
it's mostly wide open.
so it's wide open, so there's no limitations for anybody to feel that they're impeded by parked cars.
That's correct. And that was my meaning behind, like, it's just a straightaway. Once you're on the street, I think that accentuates the issue.
You should encourage people to park there.
We've actually found, and we've not suggested it, but we've said, if there are people that actually chose to park almost on, on each other, it creates almost a slalom, and you'll get a natural comment. It's free. But nonetheless, it is,
Also after November 1st.
well, but obviously, but yes, no, that's a good point. Yes.
Because all these people have public driveways, so there's no incentive for them. Or get lots of parties.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, yeah, the Google images, it didn't show too many cars parked on the side.
No, I can see
They're
that.
off in the berm. It's a Cape Cod style, berm style. And,
There are questions or motion or anything?
I would make a motion to conduct this traffic study.
Okay.
With that.
we have a second for that motion for a traffic study?
Second.
Report back. We have a second. Do we have discussion on the motion on the table for a traffic study?
What do you get on the traffic? Speed and.
Volume,
Speed and
15
volume.
minute increments. we
Yeah.
do. Summary shows a whole.
Yeah, but speed and volume.
In trucks.
It's yes, speed type count, yeah.
And trucks, yes. Okay, sure.
All right, no discussion, so. Um, all those in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. We will do a data analysis, try to figure out, you know, what the route is and figure out what we can do from there, depending upon what the data reveals.
That's great. Thank you. All right.
Thank you very much.
Good night,
sir.
everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can, once I find the agenda form and I can call you by your name, ABC. Miriam, yes, please.
Hi, everyone. Never been to one of these before. Basically, I live on David Road. It's kind of like a cul-de-sac. And my husband and I just moved there a couple of years ago. We just welcomed our first child a few months ago. So I was on leave and basically I would take the stroller down to go for a walk. And I realized like one street on Hunting has the perfect sidewalk and then the other side has like a stop sidewalk. And in order to cross over, I would have to like go into someone's driveway kind of, it's like off the edge. So like the one closer to David is very narrow. It's like very tight parked cars there. Basically for anyone, I mean, there's other people walking in strollers that I've seen. I've talked to like a few neighbors around me, and I've passed on some forms like a petition I passed out. So I've only got one back, but basically everyone that I spoke to, they agree with me. Like it should have been done years ago, but no one has actually come forward to do it. So while I was on leave, I figured like I would take on this project. But just for anyone walking their dog, there's kids playing down on Satcham Road. And yeah, so like right here, like at the sidewalk ends, like the other side is like perfect. And then the others, and then like on the left and then the right is where down by where David is. I think it's the other, yeah, like down further. And
South or north?
Keep going that way.
like towards the White House, yeah.
Mhm.
Keep going that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like Satcham and David, they kind of go into each other in a cul-de-sac, and it's both sides of Hunting is basically off of the highway. So people speed there, and also they like not like nobody wants to stop basically. Like
That's-
I've
I think
seen
that's
many
Hazel.
people
I think that's
struggling.
Hazel. Is that Hazel?
Yeah.
That's Hazel.
So I guess my question, if you don't mind, is where does the sidewalk stop? I mean, you're talking about on the highway side of the road, right?
Yeah, like where that person is walking is like the perfect sidewalk, and then the other side is like where it stops. So like, if someone like me with a stroller, like basically I just walk up and down the street because there's nowhere else to go.
There it is. That's what I wanted to do. Station is that, this
Yeah, that way.
intersection.
Yeah, like towards that is like towards Highland Avenue.
Right, and that's all sidewalk on both sides, but the other way, where does the sidewalk stop?
Yeah, so it's down towards like Kendrick. I think there's a
Right, so
Kendrick
turn it
Road.
around.
Yeah, it's heading in that
Go the other
direction.
way.
So,
There you go.
Yeah,
And I probably drive it 3 times a week. So,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
like a
it's
very
just
main
I drive
street.
it 3 times a day.
it's right after Hazel on the left side.
That's the highway side. on the
Yep.
left.
Keep going, keep
That's
going.
what I
Keep
know.
going, okay.
There's no
Keep
sidewalk.
going until the sidewalk stops. That's what I'm
Yeah.
looking for.
Like it's similar to Parker Road in Newton. It's maybe not as busy maybe as Parker Road, but still people go down there a lot, like trucks and everybody.
That's
So
David.
Keep going.
So the sidewalk's still.
yeah, so it's like
That's Hazel.
So like right here on the
Go on.
left,
It
basically,
starts at end.
yeah, it just stops randomly.
Okay. So who owns that? Mass DOT? I mean, the property there, because that's right alongside the highway. I guess my question is,
Right.
why isn't there a sidewalk and why couldn't? I mean, there's not even any houses to worry about taking.
I mean, if not, obviously, probably two crossings would be maybe a lot to ask, it's like a few blocks away from each other, but at least one from David Road to the other side.
So the David Road side, that came up a couple of years ago. 2019, 4 years ago, maybe?
I think I might have met someone who did, and I think she mentioned, I just met her a few days ago, but her husband is a police officer. Who drives a bike, is what she told me. I don't remember his name, but yeah, I think she's the one who maybe brought it up. I'm not wrong.
I just remember that there are driveways, right? So there's really no ramp locations.
So you're looking for crosswalk, a safe crossing or?
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of like what they have on Parker Road in Newton. It's basically like flashing lights and just like a safe
Yeah.
walk, yeah.
Again, I'm gonna circle back. You want the crosswalk because there's no sidewalk on the side, on your side? Is
Well,
that
just as, for anyone crossing over, like walking their dogs, there's kids crossing over.
right?
There's other parents with strollers
So
that I've seen.
At Hazel Lake.
Yeah, like,
This is David.
like,
David's on your right.
yeah, David.
Okay, David, all right. David or Hazel.
Am I looking at the right place? Where am I?
That's one of the right places. I think she was looking at Sachem Road as well.
But like Sachem is private, so maybe, I don't know what's the law about adding crosswalk there. But I don't know if it's like by that post, it could be added, because I think that's like public.
Well, it would have to be a safe location.
Right.
That's,
So-
that's the reason.
Yeah, we've always, it's not like as a, you know, the old Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will
Yeah.
come, we have to, because if we're gonna put stripes down and actually do a crosswalk, it has to be determined that that location is safe to begin with,
Mhm.
you know, so a lot of what logic says, oh, well, this would be great and convenient, may not be necessarily safe
Mhm.
because of either a grade change or a curve. But nonetheless, you know, we can certainly figure that out, but that's,
Maybe when the sidewalk ends, like around there would be maybe.
Well, I think we're on a-
Curve too, because Sachem is
you're on that
probably-
curve right there.
and Sachem is probably, you have also a four-way intersection.
And a lot of people cut through on the
Yeah.
left, yeah, like,
And it's
You get-
also close, although it's closer to the intersection.
Well, that's the thing, because Sachem's really,
Major intersection,
it's
you know what I
too,
mean?
yeah, I know, down here, yeah, I would say,
It's controlled intersection closer, so.
and that already has. Well, this time that was
So
yeah,
David
that's-
was,
yeah, no.
David Road was discharged last time because I believe the versus the mid-block, plus it's directing people right into someone's driveway.
I would be concerned about the sightlines as well, that curve on Hunting. Not, I mean,
Yes,
just whether or not it meets the regulations for.
Right.
So when you put in a crosswalk,
Yeah.
people have to be able to see it from far enough away.
mhm.
And the curvature of the road coming from the other direction, I'm not sure if that would meet those guidelines. That's an engineering question.
The actual speed versus not just what's regulatory, but what's actual speed, or, and then you calculate the distance, you know, stop and sight distance.
Yeah, because the highway is like from both ends, basically, at the end of Hunting and then Kendrick, because there's a highway exit, so. People just zoom by.
So where you're coming from David Road,
From
and then
David.
you're trying to get onto the other side of the road.
Yeah,
I like that
Yes.
section better because, and also you've got issues there too with driveways,
Yeah.
you know, driveways and curbing and stuff like that, so.
But is this too close to the current controlled crossing? I mean, not too close, not right, but it's more of a, we're gonna,
Because there were no houses.
are people that are more served here? Any other comments or?
So as part of the request is to extend the sidewalk on
No,
that
it's just a
side?
crosswalk.
Or just
Yeah,
crosswalk,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Just to be able to cross over without getting killed. Would be great, yeah.
Yeah, see the curve right there? That's what concerns me. Is whether or not people coming this way
Yeah.
are going to have sufficient time to see a crosswalk if we put it in.
Mhm. I mean, it takes like 5-10 minutes with a stroller to like be able to cross, because as you know, like I'm a new mom, freaking out in general. So to cross over all this main streets, yeah.
It looks like everything that we're saying, whether we could do or not, we need to figure out what we can do. So we need to kind of collect that data. And I realize that, you know, we just added 3 more, or 2 more studies to your ever increasing agenda, but it sounds like that's something that we would at least have to have that data in order to make any.
Well, this
Any
is
action.
the crossing here in David Road. I don't think we physically construct it.
Okay.
Unless they move their driveways and
Oh, yeah, okay,
because their driveways on both sides.
right.
on David Road.
Move the pole, move the driveway, move the street sign.
Always in the middle of the.
Yeah, it might have some design issues there. Yeah, that might not work because of. Has to meet certain standards, you know,
Yeah.
ADA as well as.
And that's a feeder pole too, so it looks like it's coming up out of the underground conduit. So it's not even just a pole.
Just a pole, right?
Yeah, it's a very like complicated, like,
Mhm.
just, yeah. Streets.
And also naturally get an issue up. If you're near that intersection and install a crosswalk, you probably have to look up at the radii of that intersection too, if you can tighten up the radii at the same time. I see what you mean. You know, that's so open.
Mhm.
You know, you probably have to do that at the same time, and then you're at a major effort.
Right.
Is this just a walking route or are you getting to the location?
Well, I discovered this problem during my like maternity leave, but in
Yeah.
general, when I talk to all my neighbors on David Road, I run into a lot of people during the day and at night. They have the same problems, but yeah.
But he's asking is, are you going for specific
Yeah.
destination? Are you going for
If you go for
specific
your
destination?
steps, if you go for your steps, then you can go, you know, to Island Avenue. The other way.
Well, I don't
But if you go
go,
in a
I don't go
store-
toward Highland, yeah, I try to like, I wanted to be like a peaceful, because Highland
Okay.
is a little crazy, yeah.
Would it mitigate the problem if the sidewalk on Hunting connected down to its
Yeah, I mean,
center? I mean, it's a
it would
longer
help.
term solution, but there's no need to cross the street because there's a sidewalk on both sides. Or if you're walking down to
That's not gonna happen.
the pond or something like that
Mhm.
along Hunting.
But eventually, like,
That just celebrate, just like collapse inside.
in
There's
terms of,
130
in terms
something
of
miles
walking, like it does end, so it's just, it goes out to the other side of the highway, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely crosswalk, at least one would be like ideal. Anywhere on this like section, yeah.
There's some technical difficulties with the current configurations and the potential site distances that we're talking about with this curve.
Mhm.
So what the committee tries to do is if there's an opportunity that we believe we can have a safe situation and then we would make the recommendation. But I think as a group, if it's not, if we're not gonna make it fully safe that we're comfortable with,
Mhm.
or it doesn't meet all the regulations, we wouldn't recommend it.
Mhm.
Even though it sounds counterintuitive, because as the chair mentioned, if you build it, but it's not in a safe, not, doesn't meet the regs, it isn't safe, Um, we try to avoid that.
The thing about a
If
crosswalk
there's-
is people, a crosswalk means the town has decided this is a safe place to cross.
Yeah.
So if we decide it's not a safe place to cross, then we're not gonna put a crosswalk there.
Yeah.
So
And the
That's
speed
kind of
limit
what
is
we have.
35 miles an hour on Hunting
It's
Road.
pretty fast.
It's pretty fast. And so when you have a crosswalk and you have somebody waiting and they're zipping down there to get to Kendrick or wherever they're going, you know, especially first thing in the morning and during traffic hours, 5 o'clock in the evening, going back and forth. For them to come to a complete stop, you're gonna back traffic up to the traffic lights on both ends
Mhm.
at Highland Avenue and up on going into Kendrick Street.
This is a tough one. The safest place is to go to Highland, there's Button, I think, there's crosswalk there, and then cross, especially if you're with a child. I mean,
I don't remember there being, I drive by there a million times, but I.
It's all the way up.
Probably not right now. 'cause
It's
they're-
all-
'cause they're building it.
Yeah, they're redone, that's all.
They're all brand
They'll be
new.
brand new signals.
They'll all be brand new.
I have
This is all
one at my
going to
house
be
and
new with
everyone else.
crosswalks, yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
The
where.
crosswalks are
Yeah.
all established now.
yeah, they actually, I
Just
noticed
understanding
But the
that-
signals
the markings up there are all done now, I believe.
Yeah.
I just drove through it this morning.
Yeah, this is another-
But
Yeah,
that
I
will
mean,
be,
this, at least here, I guess, yeah.
that's an actuated signal, so you press
Okay.
that,
That is safe.
Okay.
you know,
This is from this summer.
Yeah.
Prior to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's constructed.
And there's gonna be more work done over the science center that they're gonna eventually get through. Which will be more walking areas if we go
And
that
this
way.
is another site distance, we're in a curve.
yeah.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah, I stood in that intersection, a detail there, it's,
Mhm.
I don't like Hunting Road for a crosswalk. Each location we're looking at is very fast and no sight lines, especially at the speed that they're
Yep.
traveling.
And we bought this house in 2020 when there was like nobody around, so now we understand, yeah, so.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, it doesn't appear right now, at this point, that we want to entertain any action, is that? Unless I hear otherwise. You know, obviously, we're, you know, this is, the DPW does good work, continues, you know, there's improvements, there's long-term plans. This is something that we've heard it even before. If it's something that we can do to, if DPW can do it in one of the projects later on, we can certainly reevaluate. But at least at this point, I don't think the geometry is in favor of putting a crosswalk in with the speed that's already there. Anyone else have any differing of opinions or?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I can't really recommend it at this point, but I'm gonna suggest and hope that the reconfiguration at Highland Ave solves your problem.
Mhm.
It's a block up,
Mhm.
but they're doing some really extensive work up there, as you know, and I believe it's all been marked out now. So I know down the next intersection down at Hill Street has been fully marked. And see how that works out, and you can all, I mean, there's no time limit, it's not, okay, you have to wait.
Yeah.
You can't come back and ask again if it's not working out. Yeah, it's literally, where do you put it that it's safe?
Yeah, that's true. What about like signs, like a caution, kids playing or something?
So generally, those, no,
Yeah.
like, they don't work. I mean, that's research has found that.
Okay.
I mean, you know, but it's certainly,
Take down the 35-mile-an-hour speed zone and then you could have solved, but that's what it is on that street.
it's 35. I mean, we could do, I mean, we I mean, around the curve, you could just say slow, and then, you know, you can put an advisory and saying, you know, if it's a 35-mile-an-hour speed, you could say advisory 30.
It's not signed,
I think there's somewhere, is there? I think there is.
No, there was one in the picture.
is it?
Yeah, it's taken down, but I just remember this is the delay.
Oh, at
so-
the bend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the speed limit.
Yes, I think it's 35. So that means,
Turn around. And go down further down to the other curve. Because I know I saw one there on the right hand side.
But it's after.
I mean, do we want to
Yeah, I'm just.
put a slow or a, some sort of,
That's what I meant, John.
right.
You just passed it.
And it comes from the 30 mile.
But I think there's one on the other side. I think
It comes from it, yes.
So where we are talking now is
Oh,
30.
yeah, so you're 30 where,
So this
where
is-
Sachem is.
So it's posted 30.
It's 35, but that's 35 going towards the highway. And as soon as you
No,
hit that.
It's actually directly opposite, I will say. It's posted 35 in one direction and 30 in the other.
And it's actually 35 back at
Yeah.
Greendale. Where hunting technically is hunting.
Yep, yes,
Greendale.
yes.
We added the blinking 35. So it's 35 over Kendrick Street till you get to this point.
So,
Hunting is heavily enforced by us because it's shooting fish in a barrel. Like you can sit in that cutout and you will get speeds of 50 miles an hour easily. So I say that because I don't know if signage will help what I've seen for years. It's helped when they opened up Kendrick Street on ramp. You don't have as much of the traffic going through, which has helped and hindered it because the volume isn't there as much, so people can speed more. But unfortunately, it's just a fast road that we continue to have issues with, and we force it. But you have a commuter population. It's not necessarily residents all the time. Sometimes it is. So we could put a sign up. I just don't know how much people need it.
At least to bring it to your attention, something. Yeah.
So, thank you. And I wish we were able to kind of give you something to leave with, but this is something that I think everyone is aware of this, and, that speed is fortunately an issue everywhere in town and everywhere in the state. So thank you very much, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see, maybe hopefully we can do something later on, or we'll see, we can revisit this at some point.
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment or anything at this point? Thanks, or anyone else on the? And that brings us to something I wanted to mention. I just rammed something at the end of this agenda item. I wanted to kind of open this up to see if what we've been doing is the right thing. I want to kind of get some feedback from members here. I know this is, I've kind of picked this format up from Steve DeLisi, my predecessor here of the chair. So I kind of have going on the same format and just kind of continuing it. I think it kind of worked. We had to pivot as we went into the pandemic, and now we're back out. This is where I want to kind of open it up. We now have a full committee, even though not everyone's there tonight, but we have a full committee. And I wanted to kind of hear feedback or what's right, what's wrong, somebody, do they want to take over his chair or whatever? I want to let things be open and have a frank discussion about what is working, what's not. And, how are we approaching the petitioners the right way? Should we give them a set time? I know we say this, we've gone off a little off piste because of the pandemic and other things, so I open this up.
I think we mentioned it once before, and I understand because it's an open meeting, people can come and be heard. You can't say, we're not going to hear that issue. Is there a way, now that things are being video recorded and such, I think for the committee, maybe even for the residents, we could get to some of the harder hitting issues if petitioners coming before us could see kind of where their petition might go in terms of repetitive petitions or similar issues. Spring Road being a cut through, we saw it on Otis, we saw it in that, and see some of the strategies we've given other people. I don't know if we could do a quick hit, like, hey, we're happy to hear your issue, but before you come before us, take a look at this, see if it's still worth it to you. Type of thing. And I don't have a great.
Yeah, no,
how
I
that
think what you're
works,
saying.
but-
Okay, yep,
But
yep.
that's a thought.
Okay, certainly worth exploring.
So I think in line with John's suggestion, and I'm just mulling it as he's speaking, but maybe if town were to put together something as part of the website, whatever that they like, frequently asked questions. My street's being used for a cut through. What are my options?
Yeah.
I want a stop sign to slow traffic down. How does that work?
We,
The answer is it doesn't, but, you know, I think, I mean, I'm the newest person here, right? So, but I'm already seeing sort of a repetitive people coming before the committee with the same questions. And maybe if we come up with, the longer term members came up with the top 20 frequently asked things I want, you know, crosswalks need to have line of sight.
Yep.
They can't go, you know, some sort of, just a PDF document that's available on the website.
So there is, I don't know if you want to throw it up, but it actually, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
This thing is, I have it up here. I think Kate did this when she was on TMAC. And she was one of the first members of TMAC back in its formulation. Yes, so this is probably 20 years old. But yes, we can update this 100%. You're completely
The
right.
question probably hasn't changed much.
Speeding is a problem on my street. Can I get speed bumps? No, but I mean, we could just dictate it. But yes, I think we need to bring, we could definitely update this to, I do like that idea. I think Rebecca and I were going to try to evaluate this. We even did a subcommittee, and I think that nothing, unfortunately, we got too busy in our day jobs and just didn't do this. So obviously, any sort of input on that would be appreciated and work going forward. But I think updating this FAQ will answer a lot of questions for folks.
Some of these things are location dependent as well. So just, you know, when I get petitions, I have Bob's list of, I check to make sure that at least as far back as that list goes, that we haven't discussed this location already. To make sure that we don't have people at least coming from the same locations. But in this particular case, there was a crosswalk petition. What works for one person might not work for another. It could help just kind of, I can direct people to an FAQ if it seems like that would help them.
Sure.
But there is kind of a wide range of outcomes. Sometimes a speed study is necessary. Sometimes we don't even get to that point. Sometimes there's, so I don't know.
And I also think like the whole petition system, that could be really routinized instead of people coming in and then they're sent back home. Well, you need to petition your neighbors and, you know, like when they have those when they're asking for parking limits, you know, it seems like it's kind of ad hoc and then they have the list. Who takes that list? Where does that list go? Do you know what I'm saying? Like the documentation for some of these things that are asked, but also that it be consistent. Like we had one situation where it wasn't consistent. It didn't, the process was not followed as it had been. You know, you come in with the parking restriction, you know, the idea to have, you know, either what you need to have afterwards that's consistent, or they bring it to the meeting before they ask the question.
Yep.
But they, you know, just the predictability, I've seen it so many times, and then they'll bring in, you know, it really could just happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that I answer that don't make it to this table, that I don't want to waste anyone's time. If there's something that we can help them with and that doesn't require a vote, then that's what we do. But any sort of standardization or some kind of for these different things, whether it's a petition like you mentioned, I'm more than happy to be the traffic controller with that. So that we can kind of funnel things down to, this is actually worthy of full committee discussion. I'll try to do that.
Is there a requirement for the people in the town to not? I've lived in this town for over 50 years. And it's only in the last 5 or 10 years that everybody coming into this town wants a stop sign on their street. No matter whether it's feasible or not feasible, is there some kind of requirement that the town has to adhere to, or the committee has to adhere to, for a stop sign to be put on just about every other street in the town?
So there is, and
But
yeah.
the, but the.
Oh, to put that information out
Yeah,
there,
but
yes.
that information so that you don't have 15 people from one street coming in saying, we want a stop sign because we've just moved in here, we've got 10
Right.
kids and we want kids to play on the street and we want it a one-way, and we've had this come before our committee. We want
Yeah.
a stop sign because our kids are playing out there and we don't want cars going up and down. Well, that means the residents don't live on the street either if you have a four-way stop sign. And this is what a
Yeah.
lot of people are looking for. So you can put something out there so that we don't have, not that we don't want to listen to people, but it takes up a lot of our time. And people get discouraged because you can't always give what they want. So if they knew
I
it,
think that's addressed by the frequently asked
Yeah.
questions piece. I want a stop sign to slow traffic down. Well, and explain, and just a paragraph that explains the regulations, and we're not allowed to do that.
No, that's a really good point.
If
And
we
I think,
literally tell them, "Oh, we can't do that. You can ask all day. We can't do that."
that's what they don't want to hear. But if they knew ahead of time that they really have to have, I don't know, what's a legitimate
All the
place to put a
warrants,
stop
I
sign.
mean, I'm not sure I discuss all the warrants, to say, here's all the warrants, but typically no, and this is why, and then
Yep.
if you need to read more, then you can go over to
Yep.
another.
and I think that, because I've
Keep it
seen,
short,
it's Millis or whatever, there's a couple other places that actually do have like committees like us that they've put out some really good information on, this is what a stop sign can do. This is what it's, you can't use a stop sign. You're not allowed to use a stop sign to slow down traffic. You're supposed to use, it's merely a function of a right of way designation. It's not a speed designation. And so, yeah, we could kind of cull what others are doing, other towns are doing. But, and this might go beyond this committee and having a conversation with Karis and the select board or Kate, is we don't have a traffic calming policy like they do in Dedham. We don't have a policy or program or traffic management plan or speed management plan that we as a committee can use to be able to programmatically or reference and to be able to deploy a plan. Like, and so that, I think, just to update people, I know I just spoke to Karis a couple days ago, the other committee, this transportation planning advisory committee, that is getting resurrected again. I think they're going to be meeting at some point in the next month or so. Karis is evaluating the charters of these two committees, one of which is a strategic and one is more current, what we do now. And so maybe some of that will come from that, but I think that really helps, because right now we are doing ad hoc. We don't have, Needham doesn't have a speed management plan. Where do we want to be in, do we want to enact speed zones? We had the GPI report that said, this is what we should do. We shouldn't do a 25-mile-an-hour all town speed limit, but what we can do is do targeted speed zones and do other things. We haven't done anything. You know what I mean? So it's like, some of this here is beyond the purview of this, but I think that lacking, it kind of handicaps us a little bit to be able to kind of help to assist the DCs.
But, I think that's real, these bigger picture zone stuff, but I think you have a lot of little tiny things that you can start creating process so that you already, the more you do it and you have something systematized, it makes for a process to grow. You've done it, like, let's say, so like you have right in front of you that you've talked and you pretty much have you've already I would say 70% of the way there. We wanted criteria for speed signs.
Mhm.
And there was a meeting where when you made a choice, you sat down and said, what were the criteria? And you guys all came up with about 7 of them when you decided on forestry. And I was just thinking, come up with a process for speed signs, because you talk about it a lot at all these different meetings.
Yes, you're right.
And now you've got a sign that's looking for a home and they wanted it today. So it would be so great that you'd have it and go, okay, this is the criteria. Do you have a speed limit that's over X? Is it a school area? Is it, one of them is, are there blind spine curving with one of the
Which
other
it does
ones?
mean.
Is it associated next to a school? I mean, it's in your minutes,
Yep.
but come up with that policy where it's like speed sign policy, get that out, make it, you have what, December? Just say, okay, by the end of this year, we'll have it, and you'll have it so that when people come in, oh, this is our criteria, do you have X, Y, and Z? Because you're so close, you're
Yep.
so close because you've massaged it out so much. And I think that for that, where you're scared that people are going to start coming in asking for these signs because of the availability and the price point. So that could even be that,
Yep. No, 100%.
So, I think there was the other criteria is that had to be in close proximity to a school, and that's where Babson came in.
Mhm.
So I think, those are kind of, you're really close to that. You have a policy. Let's just say, you guys can come up with a timeline.
Mhm.
And then that way you can go, okay, these are small things we see repetitively. We have a criteria, then you have like criteria for the other, it's really helpful. You've done that with the crosswalks,
Mhm.
the safety crosswalks that happened before I was here
Yep.
with you. You had that where there's a criteria for crosswalks. And when people ask for those, I see you guys respond like, okay, we're going to analyze your crosswalk and we're going to see whether you meet the targets of that. And then the next meeting, you go, yep, you did, and here's your crosswalk. And I think that as a committee, as you're making these pricey decisions, and actually, most people leave satisfied with some kind of action.
Mhm.
You guys really, you're just saying, well, a lot of people leave unsatisfied. I am, as watching this board for the last, I started like in 2019 maybe. So, I mean, I've seen you guys say more people come to these meetings with a solution, with a real
Mhm.
solution. So build on that. I mean, you guys are an action committee to get a lot of stuff done. And so I think that just creating something that's tight and you say we have a criteria, you'll be responding like that to these multiple questions with
Preset guidance.
criteria. Like I
yeah.
said, in so many of these things, you guys are so close because you have examples after examples of what the criteria you used in this room to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So a quick one that might work is like, after you're saying about the petitions. We said if you're looking for a no parking sign, when you come to the meeting asking for the sign,
Mhm.
you should have your list of addresses on your street within half a mile each direction. And you need a sign that people would agree with, to a sign in front of their house, because now that's done. Okay, somebody's agreed to the sign, great, or they haven't agreed to the sign.
Mhm.
Okay. No, I see what you're saying there.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with any of that. I just need like instructions.
Sure.
What to
Sure.
do.
I appreciate that, Gus.
Well, I used to serve on the transportation board in Brookline, which is obviously the town is twice as large as Needham was.
Mm.
They're like-
Much higher maintenance too. Anyway, so.
Well,
I know.
But they have incredible amount of standards that they have established. They have traffic calming policies, it's all on their website.
Mhm.
You read it, it's a wealth of information which you can easily pull off where you can find information to those people.
I've looked at Brooklines. I mean, and it's good stuff. I think it's probably much more mature than
Yeah, but you can, you can pick and choose.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and as I started saying, their halves, they're not as big, they're, sorry, twice as big as we are. And they may not have you don't have the need for that finite and, but at least, as you were saying, you can point to something, this is our rationale. We are consistent through our policy to that, so that the next person comes in or the one before, but we don't need to do that.
Right.
You have something to point at.
Mhm.
And if you post it on the web, people these days look at their stuff and you say that there is a rational approach to it.
Yeah, no, there is, and honestly, there was somebody that asked me, there's a chat group of new father, whatever, fathers from Newman, whatever, that on the, and apparently there was somebody who was crossing a road, almost got hit with his kid. He starts obviously venting on the chat, and somebody's like, weren't they in front of TMAC? And then of course they tagged me, weren't they in front of TMAC in 2018? And you know what, they were. And the action was, this is what Kara Holmquist was doing the minutes. The action was, we had a pedestrian safety audit, GPI, coming in as a result of the girls, et cetera. And it said this specific crossing, if it wasn't included to the GPI audit, should be looked at. It wasn't included in the GPI audit, and we didn't look at it. So we are running into the, you know, the stuff that we say that we're going to do, and then we never end up doing it. So therefore, and that isn't necessarily good for the public trust in what we do, and then potentially, you know, so I think we need to definitely solidify, you know, and review some of the stuff that we say we're going to do, and then we need to almost take action on it. So that, you know, what we did before is we kind of, with Bob, I went through the spreadsheet, and we almost need to say, okay, this item, we're not gonna, no finding or no recommendation. We need to close some of these items out because they're open since 2020 on that sheet. And I think when I first took over, we cleaned up, I think, a lot of it from before as well. So, but that's something that I think we need to do as well.
Which road specifically?
I'd have to,
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm gonna look it up, and I said I would check in on it tonight.
How about if I pull, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
How about if I pull off from the Brookline website the list of standards what they have? And I'll submit it to you and Tyler, and you can think about it if you want to distribute it. Because then if you're interested in doing so, you all can look at it and see if it's worthwhile to do something with it.
Yeah, I think it's great ideas. I think most of us do it now is we develop contracts and need them. We started with others that bigger towns and cities, and I take them, tweak them, learn from it, adapt, and then all of a sudden, after 10, 15 years, people want our contracts because they've been owned. So we're all giving back.
Sometimes they're gonna say, Tom,
No,
you need one.
they gave us good information, and it goes full circle sometimes. We've worked it so much as a group. So that's the first step, is see what people have, I guess. I haven't really investigated and pulled those as a committee, and then tweak them, modify them, standardize them. Question, answers, things. But also what I've noticed, because I have all these going way back, these minutes are amazing. I use them as work orders. And once in a while, I run across the hallway and say, by the way,
Right, we did say
where's
that.
this work order? Because Daphne put it down, and I reread it and said, like, speed it up. So internally, how we work at DPW too, we can hone that skill. So an action's taking, what's the follow-up, what's the status? And I think we can make huge improvements on that to get back to people. I don't know if we get back to people. I'm not sure how it.
So basically, the people email me, they say, how long is this gonna take? What's the status of this? I go up to Bob, I see where we are on our list. Sometimes we have a satisfactory answer, sometimes we don't, because it's a part of a long-term solution, and there isn't a sort of standardized way to, like you said, close items out. Say, you know, we've taken this action. This is, you know, we try to use the list like that. That was the intention of the list, I assume. But there are things that kind of fall through the cracks, and then we end up kind of hearing them again
Yeah.
later, so.
And also, there have been, the system, since I've been, it's like, New York second. But, and COVID happened in between that, but things changed. But I do know that the town manager's office, which I didn't know was happening on site, they would write a letter to every applicant and said, thank you for showing up. There was these form letters that came out of the town manager's office, written by Nikki Wickham
Oh, yeah.
and Sandy, and it would say, thank you for coming to the meeting, and this was what was decided that evening. So, and it
Yes.
I had no idea that this was, they were doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, I
how
do
they
remember that.
I don't know how they gleaned information, because quite frankly, the list was in those days, I think, since you cleaned it up, that it was inscrutable. So I don't know, because they didn't come to the meeting, but it
Right.
was something that they did after each meeting, and it was the letters were very detailed, I think, describing what they wanted and what they got. And I think that then they started pulling them out of the minutes.
Right.
But that was when it was completely, and I never understood how that worked, because it was out of the town manager's
Right.
office, and yet the people who were working on it were out of engineering.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
So
I
it
think
was
Nikki was
always-
staff liaison. I think that's what it was. So
Was there something, was there like Bob
We-
told, what,
Yeah,
it was, these
we-
letters
we're-
were lovely. They
So
were
when-
lovely.
When I took over as liaison, we kind of fell behind doing that and fell out of practice.
But it,
We were sending them to town hall, and then they were taking and adjusting it. Yeah,
Tony,
to Sandy or Kate, and then Kate said, why am I doing this?
yeah,
So.
I mean, it was the
why
function,
is
I
it
guess, is the
going
question.
through 3 steps?
and then there was something, I don't know what they were referring to, but they would post, they go, to find out what's happening on your project, go refer to the website. That was something that would happen at the meeting. Somebody was saying, and it'll be posted what happened at the meeting. Are those the status?
that's the
reports?
Excel. That's the status report, the Excel.
It's not Excel.
That Excel was used to make it.
Got it. Okay. Yes.
We can
I
pick up
think
the,
it's a
we
Word
can pick up the letters
document,
It's a
again.
PDF.
We can pick up
Yeah.
the letters again, but I would suggest not to dwell on, because you already do the minutes, right?
Right, and then.
So
the
maybe at the end of the
Excel
month, when you submit the draft minutes, we can say, here's the draft minutes from our meeting.
spreadsheet.
Because you'll say, it's the next step, so why we live in Wales? Just format it and do it.
We don't have the staff, the staff, do you know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah.
just.
Yeah,
I'm just a liaison, I'm not a member.
And
But
I'm
from
just
my
a
perspective,
board.
I don't want to, I think that might be a little bit more trouble. It's actually.
Sure. We
Oh, I
we have to
think
find out
so
what the
too.
value is
Them.
of that. Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Because what's the function that we're providing for that? What we really want to do is have follow-up. I don't know if that's the most effective.
Sure, no,
I agree.
that's noted, that's noted. One thing that I think that we can do is, just because I know we're approaching the hour here, is I can take a stab at a no, it wasn't crosswalk, it was a speed sign, something, I'll send that out to the group to take a look at it. And I'll can you have Bob Smith, the student, the status report out, because I know he was out
Oh,
today. If we can have him send that, so if everyone can get homework to look at it and, going past, not just now, but look at it from previous, I think it only goes back to 2020. And kind of say the recommendations for whether we're going to close these out or want a further evaluation, and then we'll just bang that out the next meeting, which does bring me to a certain point. When I say next meeting, I am in Europe next meeting. So do we want to move the meeting, or do you want to you can have it without me? It's just something that-
Have it
Sure,
without
sure.
you. What the heck does that mean?
you have Zoom.
There's a 6-hour time delay too.
Oh, that's right.
What did he say?
There's a time delay. So there is Zoom. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
It's 3 a.m. in the morning.
So what's the
So,
vice chair?
what we could do is we could do it the Wednesday before, or the Wednesday after. I don't know what your schedules are. but-
Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
No, 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 no,
But Wednesday before when?
no. This is November. So actually, hold on.
Maybe the 30th.
No, November. This is December. Because we're in
December.
November now.
December
Did-
7th.
So either December 7th or December 21st.
Oh, the 7th then.
Not.
You don't want to do.
No,
Yeah, you
not
don't
the
want to.
21st.
That's fine. Yes. So if we just do
That's good.
our
Yeah,
December
so-
meeting on the 7th.
No,
is that
it'll just
something
be
that-
crazy.
No, not the 21st.
So we'll do it on the 7th then?
I'm just looking for, everyone to, who's looking for, okay. Yeah, so why don't, and we'll,
We'll do it on the 7th.
We'll
You
do
need
the
a
7th.
motion, is that it, or
You should move that.
yeah, we should, do we have a motion so that?
motion to move next month's meeting to December
I
7th?
second.
Second
Done.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Perfect, the motion passes, so we'll do that for,
Who notifies the clerk?
yeah.
The meeting is not actually, we post in advance of the meeting, so there's no set, like I'll update the website. Yeah, make sure that that's updated. We have a number of petitions already for the next meeting. I'll make sure everybody's aware of new dates. And it's posted. That's when we'll be up on the town website.
So yeah, I'll take a stab at that and then we'll kind of evaluate and maybe perhaps if, if we need to limit the amount and play around with the amount of petitions, but yet still to be able to give us ability to, a half hour or, 25 minutes after each meeting to kind of, or during the meeting to kind of discuss some of these things, you know what I mean? So housekeeping rather than just petitions.
Okay.
But spreadsheet is not public, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this public.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean to say it's posted.
It's posted. Oh, yes, you can go right on, you can go right onto it. And yeah, the only thing that wouldn't be updated is whatever we said we were going to do tonight. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, no, I think you would for it.
So it's
That's
right
right
under
at the
here,
agenda.
submit, TMA status updates.
Oh, okay.
And I'll open up a PDF, which was,
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
when Bob sends those out to the committee, then I post it to the website,
Okay,
the updated version,
so it's not live, but it is,
after every meeting.
it gets updated.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
so we did have a column added called TMAC recommendation, and it's been blank for a while. So we'll just kind of close it out, whether, submitted or done or complete or whatever, just so that we have that. And I think that will kind of help to kind of formulate, maybe these are the repeated issues that we have.
Traffic study after request, but there's no TMAC recommendation after that. Right?
Correct. Yeah, and so we want to kind of, take a look at it.
So the TMAC originally recommends a traffic study, but that's not in there, but when we get the traffic study, and also what comes first.
Exactly. No, you're right, actually. I hadn't thought about that, but yes. So we'll find a way to clean that up. So I don't want to keep any of you. We can make a motion to adjourn if we wanted to, unless anyone wants to.
I just had a quick thought too, what we were just talking about on the status. When there's a recommendation and a vote, should that go right on the status?
It actually
Because
probably
it's
should.
not,
I
that
think
way,
it does.
Yeah.
if people go, I just thought I heard
How
it's
many
blank.
phones?
Yeah, it's been blank. We need to kind of, TMAC recommendation, basically TMAC discussion details, follow-up, recommendation, then date completed.
I
The-
think, I know that Bob, before used to, like, I pretty much do these minutes like next week, and I post them in our shared drive.
Mhm.
And so I always would tell him, like, he goes, well, when is it done, Daphne? I'm like, it's posted, like, you can go up there, so he should be able to just pull the information from those notes and pump it into those columns.
Right,
Okay.
I get the info from your notes.
Do
These
you
are
go
perfect.
but do you go to the shared drive? Because they're pretty much posted like next, sometimes I do them, and next Monday they're up.
Yeah, I get all the information from what you write. It's detailed, and it reminds me.
And the vote just tells you, like, the vote is there, boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
What you're gonna be doing. And I think Bob pulls it from that.
So if we need to change the formats or whatever, just to incorporate, the fields that we need to say, voted on, yes, no.
Spreadsheet is working.
And I think the last thing is, I know there's another committee forming in town, Transportation Committee.
Yeah.
I've been prodding that one for several years, thinking it's important for the town to create vision and forward leaning and policies. And so it's not unilaterally done by certain employees and groups to help with the policies and all that kind of thing. So hopefully that's going. And then this committee actually does a lot of good work. We do a lot of good, small work where people can vent. Before this committee was here, people would call me, call engineering, and it was horrifying. And it was opinionated, and some people were forceful, kind of some of us would give in to them.
Sure.
And some were less forceful and probably should have had some action.
Yeah.
So this committee, by formulating over the many years, is extremely important. So I think this committee, I don't know where it's gonna go, probably will stay and then another.
Well, no,
committee-
so that's the whole, this was the
Yeah.
tactical, and I believe that there are 2 positions from this committee that sit on that committee.
Yep.
There's an opportunity, there's the chair, there's one other
So it'll be
position
crossed.
that sits so that at least,
That's perfect.
and then, and that, hopefully that's what was proposed, and Karis is taking a look at before she went out on maternity, she was gonna be working on it. I think Kate was going to, I think town meeting, all that, had to kind of consume the bandwidth and everything. And so I think that's starting to be worked on. as well.
And almost if something's too big for this committee, because it's a 50,000 budget, like that intersection right there, lights, probably 75K. So
Yeah.
that's a year and a half and nothing else could get done theoretically. So that could be, okay, this is something, but future, push it to the
Yes.
others to look at the policy and look townwide.
Town-
Not
we go to
based
town
on-
Meeting with this is our.
Townwide vision.
20-year capital program.
Right, some of them aren't coming quick, it's. a
No, I know,
process.
and I think that's the other committee, I think I've been making the case, and I will continue to make the case to increase the budget for this committee, because everything is getting more expensive. Solar signs are, $7,800 for solar signs, the wired ones were 18,000. So, what can we do?
Right.
And I need to have those conversations with Karis, and frankly, for the select board, if they're going to make a motion to town meeting to do so. And then the other aspect is the other committee really is able to provide that political cover, for lack of a better word, for the DPW in the highway and engineering for prioritization of these. They would have that open meeting to provide that political cover so that you can, because right now everything can change based on sometimes priorities, and then something falls off a list and it's not necessarily, who knew about that and all that. So this is the intent of that, is to provide a more transparent process for and political cover for DPW.
Absolutely.
So
Critically important, and as people come and go, the committee stays, and that knowledge and institutional knowledge is
Yep.
there.
So
Excellent.
at this point, do I have a entertaining a motion to adjourn? Mr. Chicola makes the motion. Is there a second? Second, Gus. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay, I want to keep going.
The motion passes with one negative.
Promise my wife that.
It's up in the air.